You can't control what happens to you, but you can always control how you react. Every day people will test your patience, push your buttons, and try to provoke your emotions. But here's the truth. Your emotional freedom is entirely in your hands. Stop being a prisoner to your reactions and start taking command over your emotions. In this audiobook, I'm going to show you how to do just that. How to take full control of your reactions, no matter the situation. This is the key to unlocking true emotional freedom. Are you ready to take control? Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop reacting. Start responding. Let me ask you a question. How often do you react to things without thinking? How many times have you snapped in frustration, fired off a hasty response, or let your emotions control the way you act? It happens to all of us, right? But here's the uncomfortable truth. When you react, you are not in control. Reactions are automatic. They come from the deep, primal part of your brain, the one responsible for fight or flight. The moment you react, your emotions take the wheel. And that's a dangerous thing because emotions are temporary. They change as quickly as the wind. One moment you're angry, the next you're calm, and you don't even know why. And yet, we allow these reactions to dictate our lives. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and you instantly feel the heat rise in your chest. You snap at a colleague over a simple mistake, even though you know it wasn't their fault. Your partner says something that triggers you, and before you know it, you're arguing instead of having a calm conversation. These are all reactions, and reactions are out of your control. You have a choice. You can stop reacting. The key to emotional freedom starts here. You can control how you respond to situations. But first, you need to stop reacting like a puppet to your emotions. The truth is, reactions come from fear, insecurity, and habit. You've conditioned yourself to react a certain way to stress, anger, frustration. But here's the secret. You can break that habit. You can choose to respond instead. Now, let's talk about response. A response is a choice. It's not a reflex. When you respond, you take control. You are not letting your emotions rule you. You are not allowing someone's words or actions to trigger a knee-jerk reaction. You are choosing how to engage with the situation. Here's the key difference. Responses are thoughtful. They are deliberate. A response takes into account the bigger picture. It is a decision made with clarity and focus. You don't have to respond immediately. You can take a moment, pause and ask yourself, how do I want to handle this? You're not reacting from emotion. You're responding from a place of control, confidence, and clarity. And that, my friend, is power. You have the power to choose how you respond. Think about it for a moment. What's the difference between someone who responds and someone who reacts? Respect. People respect those who take a moment to respond thoughtfully. They respect the person who remains calm in the face of conflict, who doesn't get swept away by emotion, and who chooses their words and actions carefully. On the other hand, when you react, you may get a quick release of frustration. But what's the long-term cost? Regret. You might feel bad about how you spoke or what you did once the emotional fog lifts. Reactions only hurt you. They undermine your self-control. They undermine your power. Let me make it clear. You are not weak because you don't react. In fact, it takes more strength to pause, think, and then respond. That is true power. Emotional control is strength. Let's look at a real-world example. A manager named Greg. Greg's team was faced with a major crisis at work. A big client was unhappy, and there was a lot of pressure to fix things quickly. As soon as Greg walked into the room, everyone could feel the tension. But Greg didn't let that tension dictate his actions. Where others might have panicked or reacted impulsively, Greg took a deep breath. He didn't start yelling at anyone. He didn't blame his team. He didn't make rash decisions. Instead, he calmly assessed the situation, gathered his thoughts, and asked, "What's the best solution we can come up with right now?" His team respected him because he didn't react. He responded. He wasn't controlled by his emotions. He was controlled by his thoughts, by his clarity, and by his focus on the solution, not the problem. That's what leaders do. Greg's team admired him for this calmness under pressure. They looked up to him, not because he was perfect, but because he handled challenges with grace and purpose. They trusted him to make the right decisions because they knew he wouldn't react based on fear or anger. This is the kind of person you can become. You don't need to react impulsively. Instead, you can respond thoughtfully, just like Greg. You don't have to scream, blame, or act out of impulse. When you respond, you lead. And when you lead yourself, you can lead others. Chapter 2. The Illusion of Instant Gratification. Let's face it, we live in an instant gratification world. Want food? You've got it in minutes with delivery apps. Want information? It's just a Google search away. Want to relax? A scroll through social media will give you a quick escape. We've grown so accustomed to instant results, we expect everything to happen now, and that includes our emotional responses. The moment you feel something, anger, frustration, sadness, you react immediately. Why? Because we've been trained to do it. We've conditioned ourselves to expect quick fixes and immediate releases. But when it comes to your emotional state, this is a dangerous habit. Instant gratification makes you a slave to your feelings. The truth is, you don't have to react right away. In fact, you shouldn't. The best way to take control of your emotional state is to delay your response. Give yourself the time and space to think before you act. In this instant gratification culture, the ability to pause before reacting is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Think about how much better your life would be if you paused before making impulsive decisions. If you didn't send that angry text, if you didn't snap at that coworker, if you didn't let your emotions dictate every choice you make. The ability to delay your emotional reaction is your superpower, but it's a skill that needs to be learned. Let's talk about delayed gratification. It's the ability to delay instant pleasure for a greater reward later. In the realm of emotional control, delayed gratification is everything. The longer you wait before reacting, the more control you gain over your emotions and your life. Think about it this way. Every time you pause and don't react immediately, you regain a little bit of control. It's like building emotional muscle. The more you practice delayed gratification, the stronger you become at handling emotional triggers. Now, I'm not saying you should suppress your emotions or bottle them up. No, that's not healthy. But I am saying that there's power in waiting, in choosing when and how to react. And when you learn to delay your emotional reactions, you gain clarity. You gain perspective. You become more intentional in how you handle conflict and challenges. You become emotionally free. Take a moment and think about the last time you felt intense emotion, whether it was anger, frustration, or anxiety. What would have happened if you'd waited 5 minutes before reacting? What if you'd taken a deep breath, thought about the situation, and then responded? You would have had a lot more control over the outcome. You see, delayed gratification is the key to emotional control. It's about choosing your response, not letting your emotions choose for you. Let me give you a real-world example. A couple is in the middle of a heated argument. Emotions are high, voices are rising. It's the kind of conversation that could spiral into a fight. But one person, let's call him Alex, decides to pause. Instead of immediately firing back with a harsh response, Alex takes a deep breath. He takes a moment to gather his thoughts. In those few seconds of pause, Alex gains control. He doesn't let his emotions dictate his words. When he responds, it's measured. It's calm. And as a result, the argument doesn't escalate. Instead of getting caught up in the heat of the moment, Alex chooses a more thoughtful approach. That's the difference between reacting and responding. Reactions come from a place of emotional overwhelm. Responses come from a place of clarity and control. When you can take a deep breath and delay your reaction, you step into your power. You take back control of the situation. This is the power of delayed gratification in action. The moment you choose to pause before reacting, you give yourself the opportunity to respond intentionally. You choose the outcome rather than letting your emotions dictate it. Chapter 3. You are not your emotions. Let me start with a powerful statement. You are not your emotions. Let that sink in for a second. You might feel angry, frustrated, sad, or anxious, but those emotions don't define you. Emotions are temporary, and they are not an accurate reflection of your true self. In fact, your emotions are just a passing experience, a response to something happening around you or inside of you, but they are not who you are. When we get caught up in our emotions, we start to believe that the anger, sadness, or frustration is part of our identity. We say things like, "I'm an angry person," or "I'm just an anxious person." But that's not true. Those emotions are simply experiences that are happening within you. They are not your identity. The key to mastering your emotions is to understand this. You can feel anger without being angry. You can feel sadness without letting it define your day, your actions, or your future. Emotions come and go. They don't last forever, and they don't control you unless you let them. You see, when you're able to separate yourself from your emotions, you begin to realize that you have the power to choose how you react to them. You can experience an emotion without letting it control you. That's the power of emotional freedom. Separation leads to freedom. The moment you detach from your emotions, you free yourself from them. Now, let's dig deeper into how you can detach from your emotions. The moment you separate yourself from the emotion, you take back control. When you say, "I am not angry, but I feel anger," you create a powerful shift. You go from being a slave to your feelings to being the master of them. Emotional detachment is not about suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about acknowledging that your emotions are just a part of you, not all of you. You don't have to act on every emotion you feel. Emotions are signals. They are responses to something happening inside or outside of you. They are not permanent truths about who you are. By detaching from your emotions, you create space between yourself and them. That space gives you the freedom to decide how to respond. Instead of reacting out of anger, frustration, or fear, you can choose a response based on your goals, values, and logic. Let me be clear. Detaching from your emotions doesn't mean you don't care. It means that you no longer let your emotions control your actions. You are still fully capable of feeling and processing emotions, but you choose to respond to them with wisdom, not impulse. Real-world example. A parent calmly handling a child's tantrum by not allowing the child's emotions to dictate their own. Let me give you an example. Imagine a parent with a child having a tantrum in the grocery store. The child is screaming, kicking, and demanding candy. The parent is fully aware of the child's emotions, but instead of reacting with frustration or embarrassment, they detach from the child's emotions. The parent knows that the child is acting out of a desire, not out of true need. The parent remains calm, composed, and firm in their boundaries, but doesn't let the child's tantrum dictate their emotional state. What does this teach the child? It teaches them that emotions are temporary and that it's okay to feel angry, frustrated, or sad, but those emotions don't dictate your actions. The parent responds thoughtfully, not reactively. This is a powerful example of emotional detachment. The parent has every right to feel embarrassed or frustrated, but by separating themselves from those emotions, they can handle the situation in the best possible way. The child's tantrum doesn't control the parent's emotional state. The parent controls their response. Chapter 4. Stop giving others the power. Who controls your emotions? The moment you let others control your emotional responses, you've given them power over you. Let's start with a hard truth. If you let someone control your emotional state, you've given them power over you. Every time you allow someone else's words, actions, or behavior to dictate how you feel, you are giving them a piece of your control. Think about it. How many times have you been in a conversation or situation where someone says something hurtful, or maybe they do something you don't like, and instantly your emotions go on autopilot? You get angry, upset, defensive, or frustrated. You react without thinking, and suddenly you're no longer in control of your emotions. They are. When you react to other people's behavior, you are surrendering your power. You are allowing others to dictate your emotional state, and that leaves you vulnerable. When you give someone else the power to make you angry, sad, or upset, you allow them to influence how you live your life. But here's the catch. You don't need anyone's permission to feel at peace. You don't need anyone's permission to stay calm. The moment you decide to stop giving others that power, you take back control of your life and your emotions. This is the foundation of emotional independence, emotional sovereignty. Regaining control is about refusing to give anyone that power. You are the only one responsible for your emotional state. The truth is, you own your emotional state. Not your boss, not your partner, not your friend, not even the person who cut you off in traffic. You are the only one who decides how you feel. This is called emotional sovereignty, and it's the most liberating thing you can experience. Emotional sovereignty means refusing to let anyone have control over your emotions. It means taking full responsibility for your feelings, your reactions, and your state of mind. Let me be crystal clear. You cannot control other people's actions. People will hurt you. They will say things that sting, act in ways that frustrate you, and make decisions that don't align with your values. But here's the thing. You can control how you respond. You can choose to not let their actions affect your emotional state. The key to emotional sovereignty is realizing that your emotions are yours and yours alone. When you let go of the idea that other people have power over how you feel, you reclaim that power for yourself. Real-world example. How a CEO diffuses tension in a meeting by staying calm despite provocations. Let me give you a real-world example of someone who has mastered emotional sovereignty, a CEO named Rachel. During an important meeting, one of her colleagues criticizes her leadership decisions. The critique is harsh, personal, and borderline disrespectful. Most people in her position would have reacted, probably defensively or with anger. But Rachel doesn't react. She stays calm. She listens to the critique without letting it shake her emotional state. Instead of getting defensive, she asks follow-up questions, seeks clarification, and then responds with a measured, thoughtful answer. She doesn't let her colleagues' words control her emotions. Why? Because Rachel understands that her emotional response is not dictated by others. She's in control of her own reactions. And that's why her team respects her. They admire her ability to stay composed under pressure, to not let negativity affect her decision-making or her behavior. Rachel's calmness is not weakness, it's strength. It's the strength to choose how to respond in the face of provocation. This is emotional sovereignty at its finest. Chapter 5. Master your mindset. Master your reactions. Mindset shapes response. Your mindset determines how you will react. Cultivate a positive, growth-focused mindset. Here's a fact. Your mindset is the foundation of how you respond to life. Every action, every reaction, every emotional response you have is rooted in your mindset. If your mindset is negative or fixed, your responses will be reactive and defensive. But if your mindset is positive, open, and growth-oriented, you will respond thoughtfully, with clarity and purpose. Think about a time when you faced a challenge. Did you approach it with a growth mindset, believing you could overcome it? Or did you fall into a fixed mindset, thinking it was too hard or beyond your control? When you adopt a growth mindset, the belief that you can learn, grow, and improve, you shift your approach to life. You stop seeing obstacles as roadblocks and start seeing them as opportunities for growth. And when you shift your mindset, you automatically change the way you react to challenges, frustrations, and even people. So what kind of mindset do you have? A fixed mindset keeps you stuck in reactive patterns. A growth mindset gives you the freedom to respond in a way that benefits you and your goals. Shift your perspective. Changing how you view challenges and conflicts can change how you respond. One of the most powerful tools for emotional control is perspective. Your perspective shapes how you see the world and how you interpret events. If you see every challenge as a personal attack, you will react defensively with anger or frustration. But if you change your perspective, if you see challenges as opportunities for growth or learning, you can respond with curiosity, patience, and resilience. Changing your perspective starts with asking the right questions. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" ask yourself, "What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this experience?" This simple shift in thinking can transform your emotional responses. For example, imagine a colleague criticizes your work in a meeting. If you have a fixed mindset, you might feel personally attacked, get defensive, or shut down emotionally. But if you have a growth mindset, you'll see that criticism as an opportunity to learn and improve. You'll respond with openness instead of defensiveness. The more you practice shifting your perspective, the more you train your brain to respond to situations with resilience, strength, and calm. Real-world example. A professional athlete's mindset shift after a loss, seeing it as a learning experience rather than failure. Take the example of a professional athlete. Let's call her Sarah. After a major competition, Sarah didn't win the gold medal. For a moment, she felt disappointment, frustration, and anger at herself. But instead of letting those emotions take over, Sarah shifted her mindset. She viewed the loss not as failure, but as a learning experience. She didn't focus on what went wrong or what she couldn't control. Instead, Sarah looked at the race as an opportunity to grow. She examined her performance, found areas for improvement, and set new goals for the next competition. Sarah's mindset shift allowed her to respond in a way that moved her forward. She didn't get stuck in the emotional quicksand of frustration. Instead, she channeled those feelings into motivation and resilience. This is the power of a growth mindset. When you stop seeing challenges or setbacks as failures and instead see them as stepping stones for growth, you take control of how you respond. Chapter 6. The Power of Pause. The importance of the pause. Pausing before reacting is the single most powerful tool for emotional control. Let's talk about one of the simplest yet most effective tools you have in your emotional control toolkit: the pause. It's easy to overlook how powerful a pause can be. In a world that encourages quick decisions, fast reactions, and immediate answers, pausing can feel unnatural. But the truth is, pausing before reacting is one of the most transformative skills you can develop. When you feel that rush of anger or frustration, the first thing you want to do is react. It's natural to want to respond quickly, to defend yourself, to retaliate, or to lash out. But here's the problem. Your immediate response is usually emotional, not rational. You're reacting from a place of impulse, not from a place of control. This is where the pause becomes crucial. The power of the pause is simple. It gives you the time to detach from your emotional reaction, assess the situation, and then choose how you want to respond. Instead of being controlled by your emotions, you take control of your emotions. In that brief moment of pause, you regain your power. The pause allows you to stop before you speak, think before you act, and respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. The difference it makes is profound. A pause gives you a moment to check in with yourself. How do I want to respond to this situation? What's the best course of action? It gives you a chance to make a choice, not just react out of habit. Pause to process. Take a moment to assess the situation, assess your emotions, and then decide how you will respond. The key to the pause is processing. When you pause, you are not just buying time. You are giving yourself the chance to assess. the situation, check in with your emotions, and decide how you want to respond, not just how you feel like reacting. Think of it like pressing the reset button. When you pause, you reset your emotional state. You detach from the impulse to act immediately and instead create a gap where you can think, feel, and act with intention. Let's go back to the last time you had an emotional reaction to something. Maybe it was an argument, a misunderstanding, or a moment of frustration. What if, instead of reacting immediately, you took a few seconds to pause, breathe, and process the situation? What if you gave yourself space to assess not only the external event but your internal state? You would have found clarity. You would have chosen how to respond instead of allowing your emotions to dictate your actions. The pause is a chance to check in with yourself. Am I overreacting? What's really going on here? By pausing, you create room for rational thought, and that's where emotional control begins. Real-world example. A lawyer's ability to pause during cross-examination, allowing them to craft a measured, strategic response. Let me give you a real-world example of how the pause works in high-pressure situations. Imagine a lawyer in a courtroom facing a cross-examination. The opposing counsel is asking questions meant to provoke a reaction. The lawyer is under pressure. This is a high-stakes moment. Now, most people would feel the heat of the moment and react immediately. They'd get defensive, anxious, or even make an impulsive remark. But the best lawyers know the power of the pause. Instead of reacting in the moment, they take a brief pause. They take a moment to think carefully about their answer. They process the question, evaluate the best possible response, and then speak calmly and strategically. This pause, this moment of reflection, gives the lawyer the time and space to craft a response that's measured, professional, and, most importantly, strategic. It's the difference between a hurried, defensive response and a composed, controlled answer. This is the power of the pause. In the face of stress, pressure, or provocation, you can regain your control by simply pausing. You don't have to be reactive. You don't have to respond out of emotion. The pause gives you the power to respond from a place of calm and clarity. Chapter 7. Control your emotions. Control your future. Uncontrolled emotions limit success. When you're ruled by emotions, you limit your potential for success. Let's get straight to the point. Uncontrolled emotions limit your potential. When you allow your emotions to control your decisions, you're holding yourself back from achieving success, whether that's in your career, relationships, or personal growth. Think about it. How often have you made poor decisions because you were overwhelmed by anger, frustration, or fear? Maybe you said something you didn't mean in the heat of the moment. Maybe you quit on something important because you let stress take over. Or perhaps you've allowed your emotions to keep you stuck in situations that don't serve you because you reacted instead of responding. Emotions, when left unchecked, cloud your judgment. They distort your perception of reality and lead you to make impulsive decisions that aren't aligned with your long-term goals. But here's the truth. When you master your emotions, you free yourself to make decisions that align with your best interests. Success, true success, requires control. It requires the ability to make clear-headed, rational decisions under pressure. It requires you to act with purpose rather than reacting emotionally. When you control your emotions, you take the reins of your life and your future. Emotional control creates clarity. Calmness in the face of stress leads to clearer thinking, better decision-making, and ultimately greater success. When you control your emotions, something incredible happens. You gain clarity. Imagine you're in the middle of a stressful situation. Maybe you're facing a difficult decision at work, or you're having a tense conversation with someone you care about. Most people, when overwhelmed by emotions, can't think straight. They react impulsively. They make decisions out of fear or frustration, and they often regret it afterward. But what if, instead of reacting, you paused, took a breath, and thought through the situation calmly? You would be able to think clearly. You would be able to weigh your options, consider the consequences of your actions, and make the best possible decision. That's the power of emotional control. When you're calm, you have access to your rational mind. You can analyze the situation logically, prioritize your objectives, and take decisive action that aligns with your goals. Emotional control isn't just about avoiding negative reactions. It's about enhancing your decision-making ability. The calmer you are, the clearer your thoughts will be, and the better your decisions will be. Whether you're in a negotiation, facing a major life decision, or dealing with a personal conflict, emotional control sharpens your ability to navigate those challenges successfully. Real-world example: an entrepreneur making decisions with a clear head during financial uncertainty rather than reacting out of fear. Let's take a real-world example. An entrepreneur, let's call him Mark, is facing a financial crisis in his business. Sales are down, expenses are up, and things aren't looking good. Most entrepreneurs would react by panicking, making hasty decisions, and maybe even overreacting in a way that harms the business further. But Mark takes a different approach. He doesn't let panic or fear cloud his thinking. Instead, he pauses. He checks in with himself. He assesses the situation calmly, gathers the facts, and then creates a clear plan of action. Mark understands that fear and stress won't solve his problem. Emotional control allows him to make rational decisions. He decides to cut back on non-essential expenses, focus on improving sales, and bring in expert advice to help the business get back on track. Because he stays calm under pressure, he's able to make decisions that are not driven by panic, but by strategy. As a result, Mark's business survives the financial storm and comes out even stronger. This is the power of emotional control. By keeping your emotions in check, you gain the clarity needed to make decisions that move you towards success, instead of reacting to every challenge with fear and impulsivity. Chapter 8. The Hidden Cost of Reacting. Reactions lead to regret. Reacting out of emotion often results in regret and unintended consequences. Have you ever reacted in the heat of the moment, only to regret it later? Maybe you lashed out at someone in anger or made an impulsive decision that you knew wasn't the right one. We've all been there. The problem with reacting impulsively is that you're not thinking clearly. When you let your emotions take control, you bypass your logical, rational mind. You act on impulse, and in that moment, it might feel good to release that anger, frustration, or anxiety. But in the aftermath, you are left with regret, because deep down, you know that your reaction was not aligned with your true self or your long-term goals. Reactions, especially emotional ones, often come with a cost. And that cost isn't just about the immediate damage you might do to a situation or relationship. The hidden cost is the emotional toll, the guilt, the shame, and the sense of having lost control. Every time you react out of anger, frustration, or any other strong emotion, you give up a piece of your power. You allow your emotions to dictate your actions, and as a result, you lose the opportunity to make decisions from a place of clarity, calmness, and control. The emotional cost of reacting. The more you react, the more energy you lose, and the more damage you do to your emotional state. Let's talk about the emotional cost of reacting. When you react emotionally, you're not just impacting the situation at hand, you're also draining your emotional reserves. Have you noticed that after you've reacted in anger, for example, you feel drained? It's because emotional reactions take a lot out of you. Reacting emotionally often results in stress, anxiety, or guilt. It leaves you feeling exhausted, both mentally and physically. Emotional reactions are like emotional taxes. They take energy from you. Every time you react impulsively, you burn through your emotional reserves. Over time, this can lead to emotional burnout. You'll find yourself feeling more drained, more reactive, and less capable of handling life's challenges. Emotional control, on the other hand, preserves your energy. When you pause, think, and respond thoughtfully, you conserve your emotional resources. You avoid unnecessary stress, guilt, and regret. The more you respond rather than react, the more energy and clarity you'll have for the important decisions and challenges that come your way. By mastering your emotional responses, you can maintain your emotional reserves, making you more resilient and more equipped to face any situation with confidence. Real-world example: a friend apologizing for a hasty comment made in anger, and the emotional burden it carries long afterward. Let me give you an example. A friend, let's call her Sarah, has a disagreement with her partner. In the heat of the moment, she says something hurtful, something she doesn't mean. Her partner is deeply hurt, and Sarah immediately regrets her words. The next day, Sarah tries to apologize, but the damage is done. The words can't be taken back, and her partner's feelings have been hurt. Sarah now carries the emotional burden of knowing that her reaction in the moment caused unnecessary pain and tension. This is the emotional cost of reacting. Sarah's hasty comment didn't just affect her relationship, it affected her emotional state as well. She feels guilty, she feels ashamed, and she feels exhausted by the emotional toll. What's the lesson here? The more you react out of emotion, the more you create emotional chaos. Every emotional reaction you make adds to the burden of regret and guilt. You lose energy, peace of mind, and clarity. But when you respond thoughtfully, you preserve your energy and avoid the emotional fallout. Chapter 9. Embrace responsibility for your emotions. You are the one who decides how you feel. You are responsible. No one can make you feel a certain way unless you allow them to. Take full responsibility for your emotional state. It's time to confront a powerful truth. You are responsible for how you feel. No one can make you feel angry, sad, hurt, or frustrated unless you allow them to. Your emotions are not controlled by others. They are controlled by you. Most people don't like hearing this because it is easier to blame others for how we feel. It's easier to say, "She made me angry," or "He hurt my feelings." But when you blame others for your emotions, you give away your power. You are telling yourself that your feelings are at the mercy of other people. The truth is, you have the power to control your emotional responses. You have the power to decide how you feel in every situation. This doesn't mean you suppress your feelings or deny them. It means you take full responsibility for them and stop allowing anyone to dictate how you feel. Taking responsibility for your emotions is about acknowledging that you are in charge of your emotional state. No one else has that power. You are the one who decides how you feel. Once you embrace this, you take back your power, your control, and your peace. Empowerment through responsibility. Once you embrace responsibility, you unlock the power to change your emotional reactions. When you accept full responsibility for your emotions, you unlock a powerful shift. You stop being a victim to your feelings and start becoming the creator of your emotional state. You take control of how you react to everything. Think about it this way. If your emotions are your responsibility, then how you feel is in your hands. You get to choose. You get to decide. You get to transform your emotional responses based on your own choices, not someone else's actions. When you take responsibility for your emotions, you no longer allow someone else's words or actions to dictate your mood. You become emotionally independent. You are no longer reacting to the world around you. You are responding from a place of self-control and empowerment. Here's the kicker. When you stop giving away your emotional power to others, you gain freedom. You gain the freedom to choose how to respond, to feel how you want to feel, and to act in alignment with your best self. Real-world example. How an employee takes ownership of their emotional response when receiving harsh feedback and uses it as fuel for growth. Let's look at a real-world example. Imagine an employee named John who receives harsh feedback from his manager. The feedback is critical, and John feels frustrated, hurt, and defensive at first. It's easy to react emotionally, maybe to argue or shut down. But instead of letting his emotions take over, John decides to take responsibility for how he feels. He recognizes that his initial emotional response, anger and frustration, was a natural feeling, but he doesn't let it control him. He takes a deep breath, processes his feelings, and chooses to use the feedback as an opportunity to grow. Instead of arguing or getting upset, John asks clarifying questions, seeks ways to improve, and decides to turn this moment of criticism into fuel for his personal development. He chooses to respond productively, not react emotionally. This is the power of responsibility. John decided how he would feel. He chose to take control of his emotional response and turned a potentially negative situation into a valuable learning experience. This is emotional strength in action. Chapter 10. The final step. Create emotional freedom by mastering your reactions. Emotional freedom is a choice. You have the ability to control your emotions in every situation. It all starts with a conscious decision. Let us wrap this up with a truth that will set you free. Emotional freedom is a choice, and it is the most powerful choice you can make in your life. Every time you're faced with a challenge, a conflict, or a stressful situation, you have a choice. Will you let your emotions dictate your response, or will you choose to master your reactions? That's where the power lies, in the choice. Too many people live their lives as slaves to their emotions. They believe that their emotional reactions are inevitable, that they have no control over how they feel. But that's a lie. You don't have to react emotionally to everything. You don't have to get caught up in the wave of anger, frustration, or fear. You can choose to respond with calm, clarity, and purpose. The first step to emotional freedom is understanding that it is always your choice. No one else can make you feel anything unless you allow them to, and the moment you take full responsibility for your emotional state, you unlock the power to control it. Master your reactions, and you master your life. Transform your life by mastering your reactions. Emotional freedom doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from controlling yourself. Here's the secret to lasting emotional freedom. It's not about controlling others. You can't control what people say, do, or how they behave. You can't control the world around you, but you can control how you react to it. Mastering your reactions is about taking control of yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, and your behavior. The more you practice mastering your reactions, the more freedom you experience. You stop being a puppet to your emotions, and you become the person who responds thoughtfully, calmly, and strategically in every situation. This isn't just about avoiding emotional outbursts. It is about becoming someone who can handle anything that comes their way with grace and control. The calm in the storm, the steady hand in the chaos. That's the power of mastering your reactions. Every time you choose to respond instead of react, you get closer to emotional freedom. You take back control of your emotions, your life, and your future. The more you practice, the easier it gets. Soon, you'll be responding with calmness and clarity almost instinctively, no matter what life throws at you. Real-world example. A successful leader who faces daily challenges but never lets them steal their peace or dictate his actions. Take the example of a successful leader, someone who faces daily challenges, stress, and conflict but never lets it steal their peace. Let's call him David. David's company is going through a tough time. sales are down, morale is low, and employees are frustrated. But David remains calm. Every time there's a setback, he doesn't panic. He doesn't get swept up in the emotions of the situation. Instead, he takes a moment, processes the facts, and responds with a clear plan of action. David's emotional freedom is his greatest asset. He is not controlled by the chaos around him. He chooses to remain calm, strategic, and focused. Because of this, his employees trust him. They admire his ability to stay composed and think clearly, even in the most difficult circumstances. David is a leader because he has mastered his reactions, and you can be the same way. When you master your emotional responses, you become a leader in your own life. You lead yourself towards success, peace, and freedom. You've heard it all. Your reactions don't define you. By mastering how you respond to life's challenges, you unlock true emotional freedom. The moment you realize that you are in control of your emotional state, your world changes. Stop letting others and your circumstances control you. Embrace responsibility, pause before reacting, and let go of emotional impulses. Take control, create the life you want, and start now. Remember, emotional freedom is within your grasp. It's your choice, your responsibility. Will you take that first step today?